Hi, my name is Dave Cardwell. In this video, we're going to take you through what it's like to go and create some hard surface forms using Mudbox. And what I mean by hard surface forms is you can see here, these are types of surfaces that are more machine-like, something without all the lumps and things like that that you typically would see in a Mudbox model. So we're going to be using a couple tools here, particularly the wax brush, to achieve our result. So as you can see here, we've got imported a very simple object that I made in Maya here. It took me about 5 minutes, not even. And we're going to subdivide it a few times. I don't have a design in mind. Typically, you would start with a concept sketch and you could import that into Mudbox as an image plane to have that as a reference, or you could just have it opened in your picture viewer of choice to tab back and forth between to look at while you're actually sculpting. But for this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and freestyle it for the next hour. So we'll just begin with, like I said, very rough. I'm keeping on the facet shading so you can actually see the actual polygons as I'm sculpting. And go in here with the, just try to start getting a design going, getting a feel for where some of the major shapes are going to go. Move on into the back area, to the head, start suggesting some major lines and themes for the design of this character we're building. Like I said, I don't have anything very particular in mind. I'm just going to try to do something somewhat robot-like. Um, Maybe pull on some of the forms that I've seen in various sort of anime shows, Evangelion robots, and that sort of thing. Um, and A lot of times people kind of wonder how to achieve these forms, but you can do them quite well in Mudbox using the wax brush, and we'll get into that. The end goal for this model is to uh, help us to define in 3D space where surfaces need to live, and then what we're going to do is export a sort of medium res version of this model, import that model into something like Topogun, and we'll use Topogun to redo a clean topology on top of the reference mesh that I'm working on here. So this mesh is not meant to be the final renderable object. It's simply going to be used as a reference mesh in a similar workflow that if you're working in the auto industry, where you would have a clay model created, and then you would go on and create some final surface, um, class A surface on top of the clay data. So we're using a similar workflow here. Again, just suggesting some major forms here for the face and head. Um, just blocking in the character. I want to basically refrain from subdividing as long as possible. So I'll maximize the polygons that I have here until they're basically we've got a very faceted shape. But you want to take advantage of the fact of or take advantage of the fewer polygons in the blocking stages. I'm just starting to get an idea here with these shoulder pads and sort of this chest piece here. I'll use the grab tool to sort of refine some of the silhouettes. So we're just going to continue on work with the grab brush. Make it a bit larger. Continue to refine the proportions of the character and the silhouette. Again, making sure we're focusing on just the major forms and not the details. And so I like to keep myself zoomed out as it, to make sure that I'm doing so. Keep the mesh very low res. Switch to the sculpt brush when I want to just push in points into the surface and sort of dig in or carve in lines. Now I've actually subdivided the model once because I'm going to go ahead into a further level of detail, and I've turned off the facet shading here. We're still just adjusting some of the major forms with the grab tool. And we're going to begin using the wax brush here in a second. I'm just going to rub this a little bit with the flatten and try to flatten this area out. And then switch back to our wax brush, and we want to change from the default fall off curve to a fall off curve that's got a flatter top to it. So the fall off is less like a bell curve. And you can see here, just by pressing the invert sculpt function, I can then scrape off or flatten and scrape areas of the mesh in order to create myself these planes. And just brush with long strokes in the direction of the surface, along this direction of the surface. We can fill in areas here using the standard brushing stroke. Carve off areas here on the top of the helmet. Just carve away some of the face here. To begin again, defining planes for us to along this mesh. Just rough in some details here to suggest components that may be in the back along the spine here. Again, just using the wax tool to build up all of these shapes, and sort of just let the shapes kind of talk to you a bit in terms of which direction you take the design of the surfaces. Using some of the influences from the actual anatomy of the arm to generate some of these panels and plates, suggesting things that have the flavor of what would actually happen in the musculature of the arm. Still be very loose with what we're doing at this point. We're not worrying about polishing the surface and getting a smooth look. We're still trying to arrive at our design, just sort of scraping a hole some of these, what suggesting what maybe an air intake or something like that in the shoulder area of this robot. What I'm doing here on the shoulder pads again is just suggesting an area that may be the high point that I want to keep. So I'm just going to go ahead and sculpt in that high point, and then I'll bring the surface up to meet that later on. Go in here and suggest some sort of panels for the neck. Again, using some of the design of the actual human anatomy to influence some of these forms, and continue to just respond to what I'm actually seeing in the model. You can see here there was a small bump here in the helmet. I just decided to pull that out a bit more and define that as a high point, and then I'll bring up the two surfaces around it. Go and break up the back area just a bit. Again, suggesting high points potentially in these panels on the back tricep. But in general, I'm using the sculpt brush for digging and carving lines, and I'm using the wax brush to build surfaces and build up to lines that I may have defined on the surface. And so the benefit of this approach again is you can work on the design and focus purely on the design and the forms rather than the more traditional approach to modeling where you're starting off with edges or faces and extruding those and connecting things and that sort of stuff. This is an approach where we're going to do the topology last. In our basic form, we're going to go ahead and do first. Just back to the grab brush here. Start cleaning up some of these areas here with the wax tool again. Filling in areas to build myself a true surface, more true surface, a flatter surface. Note here that I'm careful not to take the brush on the high point itself. I try to brush to either side of the high point. The way the wax tool works, it's gonna, if I actually brush on the high point itself, it'll attempt to collapse that or flatten that area. I can use the tool to uh, fill areas, as I mentioned. And here back on the back of the helmet, you can see I'm just working right up to that line and make my brush just small enough, and I can work right up to that high point and bring the adjacent surface right up to the high point. Let's go back into the sort of chest area and sort of suggest some additional forms built on top, and just using the wax brush again just to build up, just applying a bit more pressure, using the Wacom tablet um, to allow the wax tool to go ahead and build up a surface for me. Defining my high points here with the sculpt tool, being real loose with it. Sorry, let's get the sort of dig in a bit of an air intake here in this area. Again, building the high points and then using the wax tool to fill the surface next to it to build up to that high point. And we're gonna, after some more work, I'm gonna actually, I've switched materials here to get a better look at the shininess of the surface in order for me to read the surface a bit better. Still going in and defining the high areas or ridges, and so I can later build back up to those. And here, as you can see, I'm using the steady stroke option, which is just below the stamp spacing option for your brush, and that's going to give me a bit, much better control over longer strokes and removing the sort of jitter that you get from your hand. Back to our wax tool, begin to fill in some areas. As you can see, by brushing on either side of the high point, building two surfaces to come together to make a line, I can add more sharpness to the line instead of working on the line itself. I would instead work on the surfaces that build up to make the line. So again, just getting in here with the wax brush to move around some of the details I had in the neck. We'll just smooth those out a bit as we go. So looking at the surface here, that top surface is quite lumpy. So what I've done is actually I've toggled the material from the red wax to this material with that's very much backlit, and what that allows me to do is to look at the surface and be able to detect on the glancing angles of that surface as that surface goes away from me any sort of holes or irregularities in that surface, and then I can go in with the wax tool and fill them up, fill in those holes. And it's very similar to the clay workflow where you would work in an automotive studio where you're using the highlights and the reflections in the room to detect any sort of imperfections, and then going in and filling those with little spots of clay. And you can see right here on the edge of the biceps here, I just need to fill that up, add some material in there to smooth that out. And it's all about sort of going around and sort of evaluating the surface. Um, you know, in sculpting clay vehicle models, at some points we would actually apply plastic trash bags, plastic bags to the surface to be able to catch highlights in a certain way. And this is a similar sort of, there's a similar sort of idea behind this approach here, what I'm doing, using this backlit shader to help see some of the irregularities in the surface. So as you can see here, this is not a sort of technically complicated process. It's more of a manner of going in and doing the work. We've used essentially two to three brushes for the entire process, and we would toggle between a few different materials to get a different look on this edge here. But the wax tool is really the bread and butter here in terms of creating the nice polished surface. You can see here I'm just sort of eating into the edge here to help me define that edge, that line on the shoulder pad. It's all about evaluating the shiny areas, or the sort of specular areas of the surface, and determining what the flaw is, and then going in and filling a hole or sort of scraping away peaks in the surface. And then you can use your smoothing tool as well. Just work right up to the line here. And just take your time and move around the entire character, and just go and make sure each one of the surfaces are very true there. So at this point I've spent a bit more time polishing the surfaces a bit more. Now I'm going in and trying to clean up some of these areas in between some of the panels. Again, the wax tool is going to be helpful for me. There's some areas that are a little bit unclear as to what I'm actually doing here with the design. So I'm going to go in and try to refine some of those areas. Um, just about polishing the forms here. But even at this point, we're getting closer to something that'd be a very good reference for us to bring in and then redraw some nice topology on top of and generate a new clean mesh from. But let me go and continue cleaning this character up, this concept up. And this phase is really the sort of surfacing phase, if you will. So as you can see, we're just continuing to define the high points on the forms, and then running right up next to that. So you can see right here is with the wax tool, just to fill it in. I've made my brush a bit smaller when I'm in tighter areas, but that wax tool is really doing a lot for us to help us polish these surfaces. As long as you've got a shader with a nice specular component to it, so you can actually see what's going on and make the changes, you should be able to achieve any result that you're after. In terms of these harder surface forms, you don't need any complicated tools or any special polishing brushes or anything like that. It's the standard sort of Mudbox 2011 wax brush that's going to get you most of what you need here. With the addition of the smoothing brush with a flatter fall off on it, it's just it gives really nice results. Let me sort of look at this face area and maybe change some of the elements here. Just being very gentle on the tablet, and just scrape off just enough material, filling in some areas, and with the wax tool again, and then smoothing it back down to arrive at the final surface. just had an idea for some sort of lines or segments in these sort of neck fibers. So I'm just sort of roughing those in to see how that feels on the surface. I'm not sure if I'll stick with it or not. And then the steady stroke tool is really great to help define some of the sort of coach joints or separation lines that would be in the panels of um, this surface that's supposed to be more of a manufactured type object. So we're just going to go in here and define some lines that look, that work well with the rest of the forms in the surface. If we don't like something, we can sort of undo it, or I may recommend that you do this on a separate layer as well, so you can turn these on and off, or erase parts away if you need be. And sort of just looking at this entire sort of area, this nose area, I decided I just don't like it at all. So I'm just going to step back down a subdivision level and then just fill in it and take the wax tool again, like just like I'm adding clay, and just bury that form and sculpt in something entirely different. And that's one of the sort of beauties of this sort of 3D design process with this sort of tool, is that you can be very um, flexible with your you have some flexibility with your design approach, and this medium is going to allow you some freedom to find forms in a ways that you wouldn't be able to normally with it, like I said, with the standard poly modeling approach. Again, our goal here is to generate a reference mesh, not to generate a final surface. I'm not looking to generate, perfectly smooth surfaces everywhere. The idea is to generate a nice, a good reference, so we can then essentially trace that in 3D. I typically use Topogun these days, but there are other tools, or you can do it. What we used to do this, or I would say the old school way, is to take it in Maya and then make the mesh live, and then redraw your new polygons on top of that live object. But there's a variety of ways you can do it, and also tools out there that you can use for redoing the topology. And the reason why I stepped down a level is just to have the material be a little bit looser, a little bit more flexible. There's less polygons here, so I can have some more freedom in sort of refining the surface. Also, with the fewer polygons you have, the less opportunity for lumps you have. I'm going to use a grab tool here to sort of refine the overall. I'm looking at the shape of this upper helmet piece as a graphic shape. Just trying to close my eyes to all the form and just looking at it as a graphic pattern. I want to adjust that. I want to adjust the sort of shape of that. go ahead and make sure these eyes are more spherical shapes just by using the grab tool again. And then we head back into a little bit of a scrape here on the jaw, and just a scrape tool just to flatten some of these areas. Scrape brush does a nice job of flattening off the tops of forms that are sort of peeking their head up above the sort of general average of the surface. Back to our wax tool, bread and butter here, and see, play around with some other design ideas. Nope, I'm going to sort of undo that. Gently going in with the pen there, the wax, and brushing in some details. Just use a grab tool to sort of refine the profile of this helmet shape. Just stepping back up in resolution, decide to remove some of those segments that were in the neck fibers that I had. Find that's just too busy. Sort of doing all this design evaluation on the fly. Didn't have time to sit back and think about the entire design from the beginning, which typically I would do. Just to make sure everything makes sense. But for this demo, I'm just trying to illustrate for you how to go about creating forms like this in Mudbox. So I like how you can, again, with this medium here, you can just sort of make little marks here or there, and it will suggest things to you and ways to connect forms in various ways. again one of the beauties of this sort of approach, where we are thinking about the form and the design first, and worrying about the topology, um, edge flows and vertices as a totally separate process. Um, I'm just going to go ahead and turn on the invert function, so I don't have to keep holding down the control key. And while that's on, I'll go ahead and switch to the sculpt brush and define some additional panel breakups along the surface here. So just in review, our general workflow was to build up, or sort of go in and do some blocking and design, and then we went into a surfacing phase where we're sort of polishing up some of these the forms, and now what we're doing is going in and breaking up those forms with sort of panel separation lines and that sort of thing, just to add that extra level of detail. So as you can see, after we've worked on or added in a few of these um, separation lines, it really starts to clear up and define some of these panels and things, and give it a lot more of a machined appearance. I'm going to go in and try to add some sort of holes, or indicate some where some other sort of venting, may sort of come into play. And I've turned off the stamp spacing on the brush so that the brush will continue to build up. And in this case, using the flat fall off curve will give me a circular sort of imprint into the mesh. So at this point, we're pretty much done with our reference mesh. We're going to take a look at him under various lighting conditions. So I've just applied back the red shader, and I've turned on the shadows for the lights. And if you looked in my viewport filter list, I've actually included the NVIDIA screen space ambient occlusion filter. That's available from the options button, that little button there with the arrow on it in the top right. It's nice ambient occlusion sort of look that you can use. It works best on NVIDIA cards, and there are certain cards that it just won't work at all. And there's a pop-up message that will actually tell you if you can use it or not. But so we'll just look at it under various lighting conditions, make sure it looks okay, and this one here looks. It's a good reference mesh. This level of resolution in the surface and sharpness in the surface. So I hope you find this interesting, and give Mudbox a try for creating your own hard surface forms.